My husband has been dead for 2 years. I had thought the past was buried with him beneath the cold soil, until the woman who once tore my family apart moved in right next door. At first, I thought it was just a coincidence, but when she smiled and called my daughter's name, the child who had been missing for 10 years, I knew something terrible was coming back. From her gaze, her voice, to the way she stepped across the fence, everything felt like a challenge. I know more than you think. That night, I heard whispers in the apple orchard. Emily's voice carried by the wind. "Mother, don't trust anyone anymore." From that moment on, I was no longer the gentle mother who had endured. I became a woman determined to uncover every secret, to find out who had stolen her family, and to restore justice with her own hands. This is not just the story of betrayal, but the journey of a mother seeking the truth, caught between guilt and the ghost of the past. It has been 10 years since Emily vanished into the night of the blizzard. For all that time, I have lived alone in the old wooden house amid the apple orchard, a place once full of laughter, and now only the winds howl through cracked window panes. People say time heals, but for me it only hardened the wound. It never healed. I grew used to the silence, to the smell of damp earth after every harvest, and to talking to my daughter's old photograph as if it could still hear me. Then, one early autumn morning, while dew still clung to the apple branches, I heard the sound of an unfamiliar engine. A small truck pulled up in front of the house next door, the house that had stood empty for years, once owned by a distant relative of my husband, Ethan. A woman stepped down, tall, her brown hair tied neatly at the back, a smile on her lips that seemed far too calm. She introduced herself as Clara Bennett, her voice as soft as the breeze, and said she'd just bought the house to find a fresh start. I remember that moment clearly. Her gaze paused on the sign Rowan Orchard at the farm gate, and she smiled as if the name gave her some strange pleasure. I invited her in for tea, the politeness of a Vermont neighbor, but inside I felt something icy. She sat down and looked around the room as if every step, every picture frame on the wall were familiar. "How long have you lived here?" she asked, her eyes fixed on the family photograph hanging by the fireplace. "Since I married," I answered. "And you?" Clara gave a soft, small laugh, a laugh I couldn't tell if it was genuine or false. "I've been to this area a very long time ago. I have always loved this orchard." For a moment, a chill ran down my spine. The orchard? The place Emily used to play, where Ethan and I took our first married photograph? How could a stranger say she had always loved that place? That afternoon, as she turned away, I noticed a silver ring on Clara's finger catching the sunlight, the kind of ring Ethan had once given me on our 10th anniversary. Except for one thing. The inside was engraved with the initials E.R. I stood frozen, wondering if I had seen it wrong or if fate was mocking me. In the days that followed, Clara visited often, bringing baked goods and small-town stories. To anyone looking, it seemed we were becoming friends, but inside me, every time she smiled or glanced around the house, felt like a small knife. Once, she mentioned Emily. "Your daughter must have been so lovely. I think I've seen a picture of her somewhere." That sentence made my chest tighten. I had never told her about Emily, never displayed my daughter's photo where anyone could see. How could she know? I pretended to be calm, smiled, but in my mind, I began to connect the threads. The way she looked at this house, the way she spoke of Ethan, he must have been a wonderful husband. And most of all, the way she avoided my eyes when the fire from years ago was mentioned, the blaze that took my husband's life and erased every trace of the past.
One evening I saw Clara standing in the orchard under the cold moonlight. She ran her hand gently along a branch, murmuring something. I stepped outside, but she only turned, smiling. "I love the scent of your apples." "There's something familiar." "Maybe because you were here before?" I pressed. Clara looked at me, her eyes flashing something indescribable, a mix of sorrow, fear, and delight. "Yes, long before you knew the truth." That night I could not sleep. Her words circled in my head. Long before you knew the truth. What truth? I thought I had buried everything with Ethan. I went out into the garden. The cold wind lashed my face. Apples rolled and thudded beneath my feet. Clara's house was lit up in the darkness.
Through the window, I saw her sitting at the table, holding a framed photo. I squinted. It was a picture of Emily at 10 years old, beaming in the orchard. I froze. My throat tightened, my heart pounded, my hands balled into fists. In an instant, a flood of memories crashed back. The blizzard night, the slamming door, Ethan shouting in the wind, "Stay inside, Maggie!" Then the shadow of Emily running across the yard. And after that, a void that stretched 10 years. I did not know who Clara was, why she had that photograph, or why she dared to enter my life wearing that gentle facade. But I knew one thing for certain. There were no coincidences here. From that moment, a feeling I thought I had buried rose up again. Suspicion. And beneath suspicion, a burning hate. If Clara truly had anything to do with Ethan, with Emily, with everything that had turned me into a shadow for the past 10 years, then I swear, even if I must dig up every apple root in this orchard, I will uncover the truth. Because once the past dares to return, I will be the one to end it. This time, no one will escape me, not even her. That night, I barely slept. The image of Clara holding Emily's framed photograph lingered in my mind like a scar that would never fade. Why did she have that picture? Why did she speak as if she had walked through my daughter's childhood? Those questions kept looping endlessly, mingling with the wind's howl outside the orchard and the thudding of apples falling on the roof, sounding like the heartbeat of the past returning. I didn't want to believe it, but my gut told me that to uncover the truth, I had to go back to the one place I hadn't dared set foot in for 10 years, the attic. The place was full of dust, cobwebs, and memories, everything I had tried to forget. The next morning, I took a small lamp and climbed the creaking wooden stairs. Each step groaned like a mournful sigh. When I opened the attic door, the smell of mildew and rotting wood rushed out, cold as the breath of a forgotten soul. Cardboard boxes, wooden chests, and Ethan's belongings lay undisturbed, as if he had just stepped out yesterday. His jacket, the one he always wore in the orchard, still hung there, dust so thick that a light touch sent a cloud of past ash cascading into my hand. I began rifling through each chest. Papers, letters, the meticulous apple orchard plans Ethan had poured his heart into. Then, in the corner of the room, I noticed a small wooden box, different from everything else. It was wrapped in thick cloth with a rusty lock. When I tugged gently, the lock fell off easily, as if someone had unlocked it before, just to deceive me. Inside were a few old photos, yellowed with age. I flipped through them one by one, and my heart froze when I stopped at the third picture. Ethan, my husband, standing next to a young, unfamiliar woman. The woman had brown hair, a vague smile, eyes slightly downcast. Yet I recognized her immediately. It was Clara. There was no mistaking it. She looked younger in the photo, but that smile, the tilt of her head, I had seen it just yesterday at my kitchen table. I sank to the floor, my hands trembling. The photo had been taken somewhere in the orchard, behind the same trees I still tended every day. On the back,
a handwritten note by Ethan. Vermont autumn, 20 years ago, with C. C. Clara. There was no longer any doubt. She had been here. She was not a stranger, not a passerby. She had been a part of my husband's life, a part I had never known. I clutched the photograph so tightly the corner pierced my skin. Anger surged, but beneath it, there was something else. Fear. If Clara had once been Ethan's lover, why return now? To seek revenge? Or to hide something even worse? I dug deeper into the box and found another envelope unaddressed. Inside was a crumpled sheet of paper, written in Ethan's familiar handwriting. M. If you are reading this, it is already too late. Stay away from her. My throat tightened.
Her? Who? Clara? Or someone else? But if it really was Clara, then why would Ethan warn me? I held the paper, eyes unconsciously flicking toward the small attic window. From there, I could see Clara's house. She was standing on the porch making coffee and, as if sensing, turned to look straight at me. In that moment, I felt as if our eyes met across the glass, across 20 years of hidden time. I stepped back, heart pounding. She knew. She knew I had found something. I sank to the floor, trying to catch my breath. Everything in my head was a tangled mess. The photo, the inscription, Ethan's warning, and Clara's elusive smile. Together, they formed a warped picture of the past I had never fully understood. The rain began to fall, the drops pattering against the tin roof like a knocking at the door. I glanced around the attic and realized one thing. All of Ethan's belongings were here, except for one, his journal. I had seen him write in it every night, recording the orchard work, but also hiding his private thoughts. If I could find it, maybe I would finally know what really happened. I sifted through every drawer, every box, until exhaustion overtook me, still finding nothing. Just as I was about to give up, a faint sound echoed. Click! Something had fallen behind a floorboard. I knelt, pried it gently, and discovered another small box, this one metal, carefully locked. A new, shiny lock. Someone had placed it here not long ago, and under the dust on the lid was a single engraved letter, E. Before I could open it, I heard movement downstairs. The wooden door creaked, and Clara's voice rang clear. Mrs. Maggie, I baked some fresh apple pies. Would you like to try one? I froze, the metal box still in my hands. A chill ran through me. How did she know I was up here? How long had she been watching me? I placed the box back, covering it with an old cloth, and descended the stairs. When I reached the living room, Clara was already there, holding the tray of pies, her gaze gentle, her familiar smile chilling to the bone. You look tired, she said. Up in the attic? I saw the window open. The wind up there is cold. I stood silently, unable to utter a word. Only one feeling remained. I was living next to someone who knew too much and had once been in my husband's arms. But what scared me more than anything was Clara's final smile before she turned away, accompanied by a whisper-light sentence. Some memories should never be unearthed, Mrs. Maggie. They sleep best left undisturbed. I watched her shadow disappear, my hand still clutching Ethan's note. The scent of apple pie lingered in the air, but to me, it was not sweetness. It was the smell of secrets. And I knew, from that moment on, the real game had begun. I still remember that night clearly. The night I saw that photograph. Clara's face, 20 years younger, smiling as she stood beside my husband Ethan against the backdrop of the orchard behind our house. I was sleepless all night. Every gust of wind that rattled the attic window sounded like a whisper. He lied to you. The next morning, I rose earlier than usual and made a pot of coffee I didn't touch. Clara was back by the fence, smiling and waving as if no rotten past existed between us. I replied with a cold look, but inside, a slow-burning fire had been lit. I needed to know, to dig deeper, because I was beginning to understand that Clara was not simply the new neighbor. She was a shard in the warped mirror of my life, the mirror Ethan once looked into to reflect his darkest sins. I returned to the attic. Dim light filtered through the dusty window, falling on old cardboard boxes and things I had once dismissed as meaningless. But this time I opened every box, turned each book, and groped through the cracks of time looking for traces. Each page, each memento seemed to whisper another story. The story of the man I had thought kind, the husband I had believed loved me wholly. Then I found it, a small notebook, its leather cover worn, tucked between old novels. When I opened it, an envelope slipped to the floor, dust clouding the air. I picked it up with trembling hands. The slanted, familiar handwriting stopped my heart. To Mom. It was Emily's handwriting. I almost didn't dare open it. 10 years had passed since she went missing. 10 years I had lived in a hell of hope and doubt, but some instinct told me this letter should not lie silent in the past any longer. I sat down, the light slanting through the attic window, illuminating my daughter's faded script. Mom, if I don't come back, don't trust Dad. Only 8 words, but they sank into my heart like a blade. I read them again and again, my hands shaking. Memories surged back. That last night when Ethan said Emily had left after an argument with him, that she needed time. I believed him. I believed for 10 years that my husband was innocent, that the loss was some tragic twist of fate. But now, I wasn't sure. I looked at the photo of Ethan and Clara again, then read Emily's line once more. They fit together in a terrifying way. If Emily knew something, if she had tried to warn me, then Ethan, the man I had once loved with all my being, could have been hiding a monstrous guilt. I descended the stairs, each step heavy as if treading on my own memories. In the kitchen below, the clock ticked, the wind whispered through the old panes. I opened a drawer and took out Ethan's old key, the key he always carried, never telling me what it opened. When the police returned his belongings after his death, I kept that key as a keepsake. But now it was no longer a token of love. It was a clue. I knew what I had to do. The truth was hiding somewhere. In the secrets Ethan left behind, in Clara's enigmatic smile, in Emily's brief letter. I felt as if they, my husband, my daughter, and that woman, were all pulling me into a game whose rules I didn't know. But this time, I would not stand aside. I would find everything out, even if it cost me the last remnants of peace in my life. Because if Emily spoke the truth, then the man I had called my husband might be the demon who stole my beloved child. And Clara, that sweet neighbor, might be the final piece of the guilt Ethan left behind. I looked out the window. The house next door was still lit. Clara was there, and I knew, tonight, I would begin to take back what they had stolen from me. I could not sleep that night. Emily's words from the letter kept flashing in my mind like a burning etch. Don't trust Dad. I lay on the bed, staring at the old cracked ceiling, listening to the rain fall on the porch in time with my racing heart. The shattered fragments of memory suddenly sharpened to a terrifying edge. That night Ethan said Emily had left, the way he avoided my eyes, and the half-smile on his lips when he said, "Everything will be fine." Now I understood. From that moment on, nothing was ever fine again. The next morning, I put on my raincoat and drove to the police station. I needed to start over. I needed to unearth everything that had been buried for 10 years. On the road, Vermont was damp and misty. Everything familiar felt suffocating, maples bowing in the wind, mossy rooftops, and the road leading to the lake. The place they said Emily might have slipped and fallen. But no, I never believed she would leave me so easily.
Sheriff Nolan greeted me with a strange look. He was much older now, his hair grayer, but his voice remained soft, as if speaking to a pitiable woman rather than a mother demanding justice. "I understand, Maggie," he said slowly, "but Emily's case is closed. No evidence, no witnesses. I'm sorry." I looked him straight in the eye. "No evidence, or unwillingness to find any." He furrowed his brow and set his coffee down. "I don't want you reopening old wounds. Let Emily rest, all right?" Those words chilled my blood. Rest? But how could she rest when her body was never found? When the crime might still be living right next door to me, wearing Clara's face, and the past prowled each night? I left the station with smoldering anger. The rain had tapered off, but inside me a storm was forming. I drove around town and stopped at the old library, where I had volunteered years ago. I needed to find old articles, past reports.
In the damp archive room, I turned through the files about the fire, the blaze that had consumed the barn behind the farm, where Ethan said he found traces of Emily. But a line at the bottom of the report froze me in place. Report signed by Sheriff Nolan. Case closed by special directive. A special directive? I stared at the paper and felt my chest tighten. Just below was Ethan Rowan's signature, the same day. I sank into a chair, my hands trembling. Ethan and Nolan had known each other far longer than I'd thought. I continued searching. In the town's public financial records, I found something that took my breath away. A security fund contribution of $20,000 transferred from Ethan's business account to Nolan's personal account only 2 weeks before the fire. I didn't need anyone to explain what that meant. Ethan had bought his silence. I remembered Nolan's look that morning, evasive eyes, a tone of pity. He wasn't pitying me. He was afraid.
Afraid I would dig up what they had worked so hard to hide for years. I drove home, knuckles white on the wheel. Outside, the sky turned leaden, clouds heavy as if pressing on my chest. When I stopped at the gate, Clara stood on her porch, smiling and waving as always. This time, I did not respond. I just watched her for a long time, stared into those eyes, and for a fleeting moment, I saw something familiar. Fear. That night, I opened Emily's envelope again and reread, "Don't trust Dad," until my tears blurred the ink. If Ethan had lied about our child, if he had bribed Nolan to bury the truth, then Clara, the woman who appeared in that photograph 20 years ago, must know everything. I closed the notebook, wiped my tears, and looked out the window. The house next door was still lit, its light filtering through the curtains like an eye watching me. I knew I was getting closer to the truth, and closer to the abyss. But this time I was no longer the weak woman who believed a man's words. I am a mother who lost her child, and I will not stop until every person involved pays, even Sheriff Nolan, because when justice is bought, there is only one thing left: revenge. After leaving the station with anger ready to explode in my chest, I moved home in slow, measured steps. The rain had stopped in the afternoon, but the air still smelled of dampness, a smell that every breath pulled me back to the nights I searched for my child in the snow. I drove slowly, my eyes skimming the yellow street lamps over the rooftops, then stopped at the orchard gate with my hand still trembling on the wheel. Clara stood there like a hazy dream, a tilted smile, bright eyes, waving at me as if we were old, friendly neighbors. I did not reply. I wouldn't give her another moment of false peace. The house was silent as I locked the door with the key Ethan had left behind. Outside, the old apple trees groaned under the weight of ripe fruit,
leaves whispering things ordinary ears could not hear. I turned on the light, but the house's brightness felt weak against the darkness rising inside me. I placed Emily's photograph on the table, touched her smile lightly. The smile I had kept to warm myself for 10 years. Then drew the curtains, letting the night swallow what remained. Around midnight, as the clock ticked each second like an accusation, a soft sound came from outside, like soil being disturbed, like the rasp of a tool scraping the earth. At first, I thought it was a wolf or some stray animal in the orchard. Then the noise repeated, closer, steadier, as if someone was digging under the ancient apple tree, the very place Emily used to sit picking fruit and tell me about her little dreams. My heart pounded, a rhythm 10 years could not silence. I quietly pulled on a coat, put on shoes, and eased open the back door. Night wind slapped my face, cold enough to bite. My breath steamed in the air. There was no electricity, only a thin moonlight slanting through leaves, drawing strange patterns on the ground. Step by step, I moved toward the sound, hearing the soft earth being lifted in layers, and a human breath, hurried, a little frantic, not an animal's. The closer I came, the stronger the scent of damp earth and rotting leaves. I bent down, peering through the dark, and saw the back of a woman maneuvering beside the tree trunk. She stooped, her hands filthy with soil, scraping at the ground in small strokes, like she was searching for something precious and buried. I wanted to shout for her to stop, to run forward and snatch the tool from her, but my chest felt like a stone and my legs were numb. Suddenly, a metallic clatter cut the air, cold and sharp. A flashlight slipped from the woman's pocket, rolled on the ground, threw a weak beam, then went out. In that instant, the moonlight glanced off its surface, and I saw a deeply carved letter. Clara B. I stood frozen. Everything inside me shattered into 1,000 shards of glass. Clara. Her name engraved on the flashlight, lying there among soil and leaves like a silent confession. I remembered the photo in the attic, the careful picture Ethan had kept. I remembered Emily's hurried note before she disappeared. Don't trust Dad. And now, at the place my child used to play, a woman named Clara was digging. Searching or burying, I could not tell which at once. The flashlight's beam faded. The woman hurried to scoop it up, and when she turned, moonlight revealed a face I recognized, the features from the old photo, the same look I'd seen in that innocent smile the day she visited. She spun away, but before she could speak, I lunged, ran across the wet yard, feeling the ground give beneath my shoes. "Stop!" I shouted, my voice hoarse as if I'd lost it. The woman flinched, then bolted in panic. Mud splattered. She revealed a small cloth stained red, or a smear that looked like blood. Her footsteps quickened as she cleared the fence, leaving the flashlight as solid evidence. I chased, but I was too slow. Her silhouette dissolved into the shrubs and vanished. I stood there, panting, the sound of my breath loud, the soil falling like whispered confessions. I bent and grabbed the flashlight, a hollow ache in my fingertips when they touched the carved name, Clara B. The world narrowed to wind, leaves, and the whirl of dark thoughts. My hands shook as I pressed the button. The flashlight flared, slicing the night, revealing the shallow hole freshly turned. The ground had collapsed inward, showing impressions of a small arm, the size of a child's embrace. A torn piece of fabric, soiled with earth and grit, lay exposed. The dank smell of something long kept rose up. I could not speak. I dropped to my knees, lifting the soil with trembling hands, and felt a chilling fear. This was where they had hidden something, where they had tried to hide it from me for a decade. In that moment, I was no longer the weak mother who called the police and listened to Nolan's placating words. I was a storm awakening. Everything I needed to know lay here, in the cold earth beneath the apple tree. Clara had come. Clara had touched my past, and Clara had left a trace, her flashlight engraved with her name, as if daring me to discover it. I stood, looking toward the neighboring house where her shadow had vanished. A window glowed dimly. A curtain trembled. I clenched the flashlight until my knuckles ached and felt my heart harden like stone. Rain began again, heavy drops on the branches, as if the sky itself wanted to wash away filthy secrets. I vowed to myself, if this is a lead to Emily, if this is the mark of a lie, I will not forgive. I will dig deeper. I will pull up every clump of earth, overturn every stone, wake each buried seed until the truth is unearthed. Because now, with Clara B. carved into my handheld proof, everything had become painfully clear. The past had returned to find me, and this time, I would be the one to decide how the story ends. That night, after the incident in the orchard ended with the flashlight engraved Clara B. left on the ground, I returned home in a light rain, my heart heavy. Rain hit the tin roof, echoing in beats like the ticking clock in Ethan's old study. I stood at the door of that room, my hand lightly resting on the worn wooden panel, a door I had crossed thousands of times without ever noticing the locked secrets behind it. Now I knew one thing for certain. What I found tonight was no coincidence. It was a cold reminder, a warning from the past that everything I ever thought I knew about Ethan, about my daughter, and about Clara was only a thin shell hiding a horrific truth. I opened the door and stepped into the room. The air smelled of old paper, wood, and dust. But in my eyes, everything seemed alive again. Each object, each file, each photograph, all whispering to me the secrets Ethan had tried to hide. I searched everywhere, my hands touching drawers and stacks of folders, until something heavy fell into my palm. An old cassette tape, its surface thick with dust. 10 years had passed. I never imagined I would see it again. But now, it was the key that might unlock the whole truth. I turned on Ethan's old cassette player, slipped the tape in, and pressed play. Immediately, a familiar voice came through. Not the calm tone he used in quiet conversations, but panicked, full of fear. She knows everything, Maggie. She will not stop. My heart stopped. I gripped the tape, listening repeatedly. But that line rang in my head as if every heartbeat were locked inside an invisible threat. Who was she? Clara, the woman who appeared every night quietly manipulating my life? Or Emily, my daughter, who left the warning note the night she disappeared? I sat on the floor, the weak light from the desk lamp slanting across the thick book and illuminating dust motes in the air.
I tried to recall every detail, every clue. Ethan's old photo with Clara, Clara's arrival shortly after his death, and the strange behaviors I had observed from her, all stacking into a dark tumor inside me. Then Emily's memory flooded back. My daughter's words, "Don't trust Dad," haunted me. Could Emily be the she Ethan feared, the one who knew everything about the land deals, the secrets he hid, and perhaps even the schemes that led to his own death? I rose and walked to the window to look out at the orchard. The house next door remained quiet, but I felt something waiting there, something both familiar and dangerous, peeking out from the shadows. I tightened my hold on the tape, fury rising like I'd never known. 10 years of loneliness, 10 years of searching for my child, and now Ethan had left a piece that plunged me into a maze of suspicion and fear. I remembered Clara's steps the previous night, the flashlight glinting on the ground, and the way she picked it up carefully, as if hiding something. I wondered, Did Ethan know Clara would return to town, appear in the orchard, and stir up all the secrets he had tried to conceal from me these past years? Or was Ethan frightened of a different truth, a truth Emily held, which made him utter that warning on the tape? With each passing second, my pulse tightened. I lit the study lamp and scanned the bare walls, the old photographs, the dust-covered files. All was silent, but I knew silence was only a veneer. Beneath it, secrets lived and prowled, and now I stood in the eye of a coming storm. I pressed stop, yet Ethan's voice still echoed in my mind. "She knows everything, Maggie." I clenched my fist, a rage boiling up. I would find her. Whether it was Clara, Emily, or anyone behind my husband's crime, I would not forgive.
I would turn over every dark corner, mine every clue, every piece of evidence Ethan left behind, and this time I would be the one to administer justice. For I was no longer the woman who feared the past. I am Maggie Rowan, a mother who lost her child, a seeker of truth, and a storm no one can stop. And she, whether Clara, Emily, or anyone else, will have to face me. That night, after listening to the old cassette tape, I felt no peace. Ethan's frantic voice, the mysterious warning, "She knows everything, Maggie," echoed in my head like war drums, urging me that I could no longer hesitate. I knew that if I wanted to uncover the truth about my husband's death, about my daughter, and about Clara, I had to dig deeper into the things he had deliberately hidden. There was no turning back, no giving up. The rain outside seemed intent on washing everything away, but I understood that these stains could not be cleansed by water or time. The next morning, I returned to Ethan's old storage, a place long cloaked in dust and the heavy mildew smell of ancient paper. I had rarely gone there before, partly out of fear of facing the past, partly because I believed everything important had been buried in him. But now I realized the storage was a treasure trove, a trove of secrets Ethan thought I would never find. I took the flashlight, stepped carefully, hands trembling but eyes straining to take in every detail. Dust lay thick on the boxes and wooden shelves. I inhaled deeply, the air dense with the scent of time, and began to sift, opening each crate and turning over every sheet. Suddenly, in a dim corner at the back of the storage, my eyes caught a small door almost blending into the wall. It was shut with old, darkened wooden planks eaten by time. I hesitated for a second, my heart threatening to leap out of my chest, then placed my hand on the rusty handle and pushed hard. The creak echoed through the empty storehouse like an alarm bell, but I no longer felt fear. The door opened to reveal a small room, carefully arranged, yet full of traces of a secret life I had never known. Inside, files were neatly organized, but dense. I picked up folders about land projects, contracts, papers, and financial declarations Ethan had concealed. Everything proved there were schemes and ambitions I had never known. But what made me tremble most was an old photograph set on the table. Clara, but a younger Clara, with a coy smile and eyes that seemed to sparkle with knowing. The photo was not merely a keepsake. It was evidence of a complicated relationship, a past Ethan had hidden from me. All the clues in that room began to assemble into a horrifying picture. Clara had been Ethan's lover. She hadn't simply appeared after my husband's death. The relationship had existed quietly, prolonged, possibly the cause behind many wrong decisions, cover-ups, and ultimately his mysterious death. I stared at the picture, my hands shaking, my head spinning. I felt as if I stood on the brink of a dreadful truth that, if I misstepped, would drag me into an inescapable whirlpool. I opened each drawer, carefully turned each paper, searching for what remained. There I found Ethan's handwritten notes, appointment dates, messages with Clara, and details showing his fear that something would be exposed. Ethan's voice from the old tape echoed in my mind. "She knows everything, Maggie." Was she, Clara, standing behind every plan? Or Emily, my daughter, who seemed to hold all the secrets? I sat down on the floor in that secret room, anger and fear intertwined. For 10 years I had lost Emily, lost my husband, lost faith in everything around me. But now all those secrets, all those schemes, all those lies lay squarely in my hands. I knew that if I wanted revenge, if I wanted to find Emily and bring the truth to light, I had to go deeper into this room and face what Ethan and Clara had tried to hide. I lifted the cassette tape again, looked around the room, and took a deep breath. The rain still tapped on the tin roof like a beating drum. I knew that the journey for justice and revenge had only just begun.
Everything started from this secret room, where plots, crimes, and old loves were entangled, leaving stains I would never forgive. I rose, tightened my grip, and told myself Clara had been Ethan's lover, but now I would hold the power. And when I uncovered the whole truth, no one, not Clara nor any accomplice, would have a chance to escape punishment. I would confront them all. I would take revenge, and no one could stop a mother hunting justice for her daughter. The secret room still clung to the smell of old paper and the sweat of hidden secrets as I gently closed the door behind me. I carried a handful of files, the photograph of young Clara, and Ethan's cassette tape like loaded bullets. Now all that remained was to pull the trigger. I hadn't expected the meeting to come so soon. Before I could steady myself, a soft knock echoed at the door, as if someone knew I had just opened a door they wanted kept closed. Clara stood there on the porch, her face pale under the weak morning sunlight. She no longer bore the calm demeanor of a neighbor bringing over baked goods. Instead, her eyes were red-rimmed, hair tousled by the wind, like someone who had endured a sleepless, harrowing night. I had seen many kinds of pretenses, but the fear etched on her face made my heart lurch. She stepped inside without waiting for me to invite her, leaving a damp handkerchief on the arm of a chair. "Mrs.
Maggie," she said, her voice hoarse, as if struggling to hold something back. "I need to talk to you. I can't keep it in anymore." I sat down, placing my hand on Emily's photo as if touching an old wound. Her words hooked me, pulling me toward an abyss I had just unearthed. "Speak," I asked, my voice low but each word sharp as a knife. Clara sighed, eyes fixed on the floor, then suddenly broke into sobs. Her cry wasn't the kind of staged tears for a neighborly performance. It was the cry of someone crushed by conscience. "Ethan said he would leave his wife for me," she began, each word drawn like a vein of blood. "He promised me many things. He said he'd buy me another life, that we would leave this town together." I listened, but I didn't believe her. 10 years of betrayal had taught me that a man's promise was the emptiest thing on earth. "And then?" I asked, not looking away from her face, searching for signs of deception. Clara lowered her head. "Then he betrayed me."
He went back to you, to his family. He said it was only temporary, that he wanted peace. I went mad. I didn't know what to do. I just wanted to speak with the little girl, with Emily, so you would understand, so she wouldn't say things that could destroy him. Her voice choked as if strangled by her own words. I sensed the excuse was thinly woven. A woman broken by love, a man who deceived, an innocent child caught in between. But something in her story didn't align. The hurried words, the evasive glances, the overly rehearsed details. "Where did you find Emily?" I demanded, my tone cold. She closed her eyes, swallowed hard, and opened them again. "I found her on the stormy night." The girl was alone under the apple tree.
I just wanted to clarify everything so she would stop saying things that scared him. I did not come to harm. I just wanted you to know the truth. Clara bent over, hands trembling as they clutched the edge of the chair.
But then there was a sound, a struggle, and she fell. I saw her head hit a rock. I panicked. I was terrified. I thought you wouldn't believe me if I told the truth, and if everyone knew, Ethan would be ruined. I buried the girl there. I buried that secret. The room spun. Her confession fell like a verdict. Emily had died from an accident caused by Clara, and Clara had concealed it ever since. I stared into her eyes, trying to suppress the rage screaming in my chest. My heart felt crushed. Part of me wanted to drop to the floor and cry. Part wanted to seize the liar by the throat and pry out every shred of truth. Fragments of memory shattered. Ethan's broken promises, Emily venturing out that night, the hastily written note from my daughter. 10 years seemed to collapse in a moment.
Yet one burning question remained. Was her story entirely true? Or was it a ploy to deflect suspicion from the real culprit? I felt the old instinct stir within me. To trust, to let loneliness ease. But 10 years had made me wiser. I could not let tears and remorse conceal the evidence. I thought of the cassette tape, Ethan's frantic words. She knows everything, Maggie. Did he fear only that Clara knew the truth, or did he fear Emily knew something else he still concealed? I drew a deep breath, forcing myself to calm. You said you buried the girl, I said slowly, each word cutting through the air. Then show me where you buried her. Let me see. If it is true, what will I do? I think I will not cry anymore. I think I will make justice return. Clara bowed her head, helpless. I was scared. I've tormented myself for 10 years. I could not face it. But I know you have the right to know. If you want, I will lead you to the place.
I looked at her. In those eyes, there was genuine remorse, but also the hint of a criminal trying to hide something. Clara's confession could be the key to closing all pain, or it could be bait to conceal the true mastermind. I thought of Nolan, the transferred money, the notebook, and the photo in the attic. Everything was connecting in a pattern I had yet to fully understand. The decision sharpened in my mind like a cold blade. I would not accept this confession as the closure of the story. I needed evidence. The earth, the bones, the clarity. I would follow Clara to the place she said, but I would not merely listen to her account. I would use my eyes, my hands, and my memory to unmask every act of deception. Fine, I said, my voice steel hard. Lead me. But know this, if you lie to me, I will not hesitate to do whatever it takes for justice for Emily. Clara lowered her head, shoulders shaking under the weight of responsibility. She lifted her face, tears streaking down, and led me out of the house, each step heavy, as if carrying 10 years of torment. I followed, carrying my resolve and my vengeance, knowing that from this moment, everything would change. I would investigate myself, dig myself, and if necessary, tear open every veil of lies to drag the truth into the light. That night, after following Clara to the place she said she'd buried Emily's secret, I returned home tangled and raw, as if every scrap of the past, every photograph, every note had wrapped itself around me in a knot I couldn't undo. I sat on the porch steps, the weak yellow light from the windows painting the worn boards, and stared out at the orchard where Emily used to play. The night wind passed, bringing the damp smell of earth and fallen leaves. But in my chest, the scent of burning still lingered, a sign that darkness had never truly let go of me. I knew that once a secret was exposed, there would be those who would do anything to keep the truth from rising, and I could not predict how far they would go. Then, around midnight, I heard a crackling blast from the barn. The storage where cases, files, and evidence Ethan and I had kept were kept. My heart jumped. Smoke began to rise, a furious red like a sea of flames, carrying the stench of melting plastic and rotting wood. I rushed outside just in time to see the blaze licking at the wooden racks, tearing apart the piece I had lived in for 10 years. The police later told me it was an electrical short, an unfortunate accident, but I knew the truth. Every beat of my heart, every blink, every breath told me someone wanted to erase everything. Erase traces of Emily, of Clara, of Ethan, and the secrets I held in my hands. Through the wall of fire and ash, I combed the wreckage, ignoring the heat that scorched my skin and blackened my hands. Papers, files, photographs singed and turned to small heaps of ash. Then, in a shadowed corner of the storage, under a collapsed board, something metallic glinted. I dropped to my knees, brushed away the ash with my hands, and saw Emily's necklace. The small silver pendant engraved ER she never took off. My heart stopped, then shattered. Tears poured down my face as I clutched the necklace like I was holding my daughter, like touching the remaining piece of her soul. I did not cry from pain. I cried from fury. Who set fire to the barn? Who wanted to obliterate every trace? Clara had said Emily died in an accident, but now, looking at the necklace, I was only more convinced that someone had tried to hide the truth. Someone had deliberately set the fire, turning evidence into dust to cover their crimes. And I, a mother who had lost her child, standing amid the flames, knew I could not simply watch. I recalled Clara's steps, her half-hearted confession, the way she avoided my eyes, the tremor in her voice.
I thought of Ethan's cassette, his panicked warning, "She knows everything, Maggie." Was Clara merely a tool? Or was there someone else pulling the strings behind the scenes, skillfully steering the events that led to death and cover-up? I closed my eyes, felt the hot gusts, the tongues of flame, and decided I would not miss any clue. In the ashes, the necklace became a living piece of evidence, a reminder of my lost child and of a mother's duty. I lifted it up, the cold silver pressed to my skin, and hatred surged. I was no longer the fragile mother who only suffered. I was a seeker of truth, a vengeance bearer for my daughter. From this moment on, every step I took had to be exact, every decision calculated. Those behind the blaze, those who dared touch my family's memories, would pay. I stood in the ruin, the necklace in my hand, flames reflecting on my face, and I saw Emily in my mind, that small girl, bright-eyed, gentle smiling.
I promised myself and her that I would uncover the truth. I would go to the end no matter the danger. I would exhume every buried secret, shine light into every corner the culprit tried to hide behind. I would not forgive. I would take revenge. And from now on, the barn fire would not only burn ashes, it would kindle the storm I would unleash to reclaim justice for my daughter. The ashes of the apple barn still lingered deep in my nostrils. The smell of char, iron, and something like justice incinerated. I held Emily's small necklace, letting it rest in my palm like a fragile candle in the dark. At moments, I thought I would collapse, but anger pulled me upright, like a starving beast returning to its prey. I knew what I had to do next. Confront the ones hiding the truth. Dig through every file and force them to answer, publicly, without denial. Sheriff Nolan was the first person I sought. Clara's words, the photograph in the barn, Ethan's cassette, and the necklace in my hand, they all pointed in one direction. Someone within the system had been complicit. Nolan came to mind because he held the keys to the town's secrets. Every path to the truth was like a web of threads.
and Nolan was the knot at the center. I called him, keeping my voice calm, though beneath it simmered a rage thinly veiled.
He agreed to meet me at the office, a small room bathed in yellow light, old photographs on the wall standing as silent witnesses. Nolan sat across from me, salt and pepper hair, eyes trembling as if wrenched from a peaceful dream. He shook his head, forcing a weak smile, but I saw the exhaustion and fear hiding behind it. "I know you have questions, Maggie," Nolan began, his voice low, "and I will deny nothing anymore." His confession fell like a blade cutting through the room. He had known more than he ever admitted. There had been calls, secret meetings, thick envelopes exchanged hand to hand. He had signed reports stitched together to smooth everything over. "I covered up the case," Nolan said, eyes downcast as if apologizing to the ground itself. "I did it to protect the town. You understand, don't you? If the truth came out, families would be destroyed. Businesses would close, and the reputation of this place, which many depend on to live, would collapse." I thought I was doing the right thing. I listened, a cold shiver running through me. Protect the town's reputation? Protect whom? Those who paid, or the honest townsfolk who borrowed names to survive? 10 years I endured quietly. It wasn't to preserve a false image. I came for justice for my child, not to clean up a selfish town's reputation. "Nolan," I said, my voice like steel, "it is not your right to decide who lives in the truth and who dies in silence. Emily is not a sacrifice for anyone's reputation." He bowed his head, eyes burning red. "I know. I was wrong." Then he told me Ethan had come to him, offering a large sum to handle the complications. Forged documents, testimonies that could easily be buried, to avoid scandal over the land project. Nolan had accepted the money. He believed that keeping secrets maintained social order. He claimed he didn't know where it would lead, didn't anticipate my daughter disappearing, didn't foresee the nights I searched under snow. Those words were like water washing over, but they could never cleanse his role in the crime. I stood, telling Nolan I would take the evidence to the prosecutor. I would not let these people use reputation to silence the truth. Nolan held his head, weeping like a guilty man. Before leaving, he clasped my hand, whispering, "Be careful, Maggie. There are people who won't let this be spoken. They could do anything." His eyes were filled with a fear I had never seen in a sheriff, afraid of exposure, afraid that those who bought him would take revenge. After that meeting, an uneasy feeling gripped me. Nolan's warning about people was not the rant of a frightened man. It was a threat. I watched him leave the office, his figure hopping over puddles in the night before disappearing around the corner. That night, I did not sleep. I kept watch at the gate, listening to every passing car, every gust slapping the roof. I called my daughter but only got the message, no signal. I returned to my room, placing Emily's necklace on the table, trying to arrange the scattered fragments ahead. 2 days later, news struck like a nightmare. Nolan had an accident on his way home. Crowds gathered outside his house, flashing police lights blinking, and a mangled car, smashed bucket, shattered glass, oil and water pooling on the street. They said he died on the spot. They said the siren sounded too late. They said another car had left the scene in the night. And then they said something that made my blood run cold. The brake on his car had been tampered with. Speculation started. Some claimed it was an unlucky accident. Others insisted it was deliberate. I stared at the photograph of Nolan hung beneath a small flag at the old precinct. In my mind, his teary eyes staring at me one last time remained frozen in memory. My heart ached, not just for pity, but from the realization that the lives of those who dared reveal the truth were under threat. Who wanted Nolan silenced? Who exploited fear and money to protect themselves? And if Nolan, who had hidden the truth, was eliminated right after confessing, then my position, a new threat, was now targeted. I remembered his whisper. They could do anything. Now I understood. It was not just a warning, it was a method. I stood on the porch steps, looking down the road where Nolan had met his fate, wind whipping my coat, and my mind chilled to the bone. The pain of losing someone did not make me falter. On the contrary, it ignited something else inside. Determination. If justice could be bought, revenge would be the only way to restore my daughter's name. I caressed the necklace in my palm, feeling its weight like an unbreakable oath. They had extinguished one person. They would not extinguish me. I would dig deeper, uncover the mysterious hand pulling these strings, even if it cost me my life. And from the ashes of the apple barn, another fire ignited, not to burn, but to illuminate. I stepped into the darkness, carrying my wrath, my maternal love, and a cold resolve. No one would escape the hands of a betrayed mother. After Nolan's mysterious death, a chilling cold wrapped around me, yet it only fanned the fire inside. I knew justice was no longer in the hands of the police or those who claimed to protect the truth. If I wanted to know the truth about my daughter, about Ethan and Clara's secrets, I had to find it myself. And I realized a painful truth. Emily was still a missing child, a fragment of a soul suspended between life and death, unreachable to me. I could not let the perpetrator continue to hide in the shadows. The apple orchard, where Emily once ran and laughed every afternoon beneath the drooping branches, had now become the battlefield of truth. I stood among the trees, holding a shovel, heart pounding. Moonlight filtered through the leaves, casting patchy shadows, making every sound terrifying. With every step, I heard the earth squish beneath my feet, and in my mind echoed memories of Emily, tiny fingers brushing my arm, her pure laughter, her clear eyes full of trust. I knew it was these memories that would sustain me tonight. I began digging at a spot Clara often visited, a patch of bare ground beneath an old apple tree where Emily had played, and where I had once seen Clara standing silently, watching me during her visits. My heart raced with hope and fear. I dug carefully, each spade full of muddy earth mixed with dry leaves, the damp smell hitting my nose. Each strike of the shovel felt like tearing deeper into my own heart, into the fragile hope that my daughter might still be alive. Suddenly, the shovel hit something hard. A cold clink rang out, like the touch of death on my shoulder. My heart leapt, hammering against my ribs as if trying to escape. I dug with my hands, and beneath the damp soil I saw human bones. Next to them, in an old silver box, lay a bracelet engraved with E.R. Emily's bracelet from her childhood, the gift I had given her. Fear and despair crashed over me like a tidal wave.
I sank to the ground, hands trembling as I held the cold remnants of evidence. Emily had truly been buried here. The truth was harsh, heart-wrenching, and suffocating. I collapsed, crying not just for the loss of my child, but realizing that everything I had believed, every explanation from Clara, every reassurance from those around me, had been layers of ice hiding the truth. The pain cut into me like a sharp blade, reminding me of betrayal, of guilt, of the stacked lies I had lived with. Yet in that moment of despair, another fire rose within me, not fear, not sorrow, but hatred. I gripped the silver bracelet tightly, feeling its cold, solid weight like an unbreakable vow. Hatred surged like an unstoppable, raging river. I thought of Ethan, the husband gone yet responsible for endless pain. I thought of Clara, the one behind all the secrets. I thought of Nolan, who hid the truth and paid the price. They had all touched my life, all caused my losses, and now I could not forgive.
No one, friend or foe, would be allowed to evade responsibility. I stood, looking at the silent rows of apple trees in the moonlight, the damp earth beneath my feet, and felt strength rise from the pain. I knew the journey was far from over. The secrets buried for years were only part of the game, and I, a mother who lost her child, was an opponent who could not be subdued. I would follow every clue, unearth every layer of deception, and make all involved pay. The ashes of the apple barn, Nolan's death, and now Emily's bones beneath the apple tree, they formed an inescapable spiral. I would not collapse again. The fire of hatred, the pain of loss, and maternal love rose into an unstoppable force. I stood there, holding the silver bracelet, and promised Emily, I will uncover every truth. I will avenge you, and I will not stop until everyone involved has paid.
That night in the quiet orchard, only the rustling wind and the beat of my heart remained, strong, cold, and unwavering. I knew that from this moment, every step I took would lead to justice, no matter the danger, and nothing, no one could stop a mother who had lost her child but never lost her thirst for vengeance. That night, when I unearthed Emily's silver bracelet beneath the apple tree, soil still clinging to my nails, my chest felt as if gripped by an invisible hand, the pain turning into a cold, unquenchable fire. I carried the bracelet into the house, placing it on the dining table like a challenge to those who dared bury my child, knowing that the next step had to be a direct confrontation. I wanted to look the liar in the eye, hear an undeniable confession, and above all, witness the false kiss vanish from her face. So I invited Clara, not to make peace, but to stage a performance, a trap of words and sounds. I set the table as I had once done for Ethan, low candles, neatly placed plates and cutlery, simple food enough to create a sense of intimacy. When she entered, I felt a cold aura radiating from her, yet she feigned warmth, as if she were an old friend or a gentle neighbor.
She sat down, hands trembling slightly as she held her teacup. Or was it a pretense? I smiled, chewing slowly, letting the silence stretch long enough to swallow some of the tension coiled in my chest. Speak your mind, Clara, I said, voice gentle, like a mother soothing a child. I think we can start over. Her eyes widened, disbelief mingling with fleeting joy and caution. She spoke of remorse, the guilt she had carried for 10 years. Her words flowed into my ears like wine, but I did not drink. I let them pass, maintaining calm to coax every secret out of her. The meal passed, the clink of dishes, soft murmurs filling the small kitchen. I waited until she leaned back, voice hoarse, seeming relieved after spilling her thoughts, then quietly stood. Clara, I said, he left something for me. I reached for the cassette I had listened to countless times, placed it in the player, and pressed play.
The room's air seemed to shrink. Ethan's voice, trembling and panicked, sliced through the silence. She knows everything, Maggie. She won't stop. I paused, watching her reaction. In an instant, Clara's expression shifted. Fear, panic, and then a terrifying release, like someone about to cry with no escape. She wept, truly wept, not the staged tears of deception. Confessions poured out like a broken dam. Ethan had promised to leave his wife for her, whispered sweet words, then returned as if nothing happened. Emily, she revealed, had seen too much. Papers, contracts, schemes Ethan pursued to manipulate land deals. She said she'd tell everything to you, would reveal all the tricks used to shift land, to gain advantage. Clara choked out. I was scared. I thought if the truth came out, Ethan would lose everything. The town would collapse, and I would have nowhere to go. I just wanted her quiet. I just wanted her to stop speaking so no one would be ruined. Every I just wanted cut like a blade into my heart. That gentle phrasing carried the weight of an entire sky of guilt. I listened, and as her face turned pale with emotion, another cold resolve rose within me. Not forgiveness,
but execution. You buried the secret, that's what you said, I whispered, eyes fixed on the silver bracelet on the table, reminding her. She buried her face in her hands, sobs muffled, then added, Emily had fallen, hit her head on a rock. It all happened in an instant. She wiped her eyes, voice strangled by remorse. I was scared. I buried her because I thought it was best. Her words shattered the last barriers within me. I rose slowly, approaching her, gazing into her bloodshot eyes. Do you really think burying my child was the best? That this would erase your guilt? My voice was icy, yet within, a fire raged stronger than ever. Clara tried to conceal, to plead, to beg forgiveness, but I was no longer weak.
I grabbed the collar of her shirt, pulling her close, wanting to see if that face was genuine or a mask. She struggled, knocking a small knife off the table I had been using to slice fruit. The knife clattered, metal flashing like lightning in the silent night. It all happened in a heartbeat. She struggled harder. I pulled stronger. The chair toppled. Plates fell. Food scattered. In the chaos, the knife skidded, rolling like a cold prophecy. I saw its glint, the reflection of her face in the steel, and at that moment, I was no longer a frightened mother. I was a storm fueled by a decade of loss. Her hand touched the blade for a fleeting moment, face pale. She screamed, then collapsed, eyes open but empty. I stood there, gasping, fingers still trembling, coldness like ice in my throat. No one won in that instant. Only the truth spilled blood across the dining table, and a silence heavier than any scream. I looked at her, thinking of Emily, of countless sleepless nights, knowing that from this moment, there was no turning back for either of us. She had confessed, but the price of truth was blood, and I, the mother, would not let it stop until every piece of evidence was revealed, every accomplice unmasked, and justice, at any cost, was served. Immediately after the struggle with Clara, when the knife clattered to the floor and her ragged breathing filled the room, a searing heat spread across the space, like a flame about to erupt. Before I could even steady myself, the smell of smoke began to curl into my nostrils, subtle but menacing. At first, I thought it was just a stray ember or a small candle flame from our dinner. But as the crackle of burning wood grew louder, I realized that not just the kitchen but the entire apple orchard outside was ablaze. The heat rushed in, scorching my skin, and I understood that like everything that had happened in the past 10 years, this fire was no accident. Someone wanted to erase every trace, every piece of evidence, every secret, every sin that Clara had hidden and I had just unearthed. I scrambled outside, eyes flickering in the flame's flickering glow. Clara lay in the middle of the orchard, her body covered in ash, the acrid scent of smoke stinging my nose. I screamed her name, but there was no reply. Only the eerie sound of wind slicing through the hanging apple branches, mingled with the occasional snap of burning wood. I knelt beside her, touching her, and knew she was gone. The emptiness surged through me, my heart torn, not from fear, but from the bitter truth. The person I had just confronted, the one I had both hated and despised, would never explain or atone. As Clara lay motionless, I felt my own face burn, the fire scorching patches of skin, red scars reminding me that revenge is never harmless. I looked at my hands, the heat mixed with the smell of smoke, and in that instant, the entire past returned. Long nights searching for Emily, Ethan's secrets, Clara's schemes and lies. I, the lone mother, had survived, but at the cost of my body and a heart riddled with wounds. Before I could recover, the sound of police sirens drew near. They stormed into the orchard, lights cutting through smoke and fire, and saw the horrifying scene. 2 women amid the burning apple trees, one dead, the other badly burned, eyes red and body trembling. I heard them whispering, speculating that I had killed Clara. But they had no proof.
No one saw me pull her. No one witnessed Clara's confessions. No one knew that every act I committed was a reaction to the truth I had just uncovered. I stood amid smoke and flame, eyes ablaze with hatred, yet full of pain, knowing that every suspicious glance would be aimed at me. But I did not fear. I had lost my daughter, lost 10 years of peace, and now I understood that the truth was in my hands alone, even if the world doubted. They pulled me from the fire, dousing my face with water, bandaging the burns. I felt every searing pain spread across my body, yet inside, a strange strength surged. Clara was gone, but the secrets she carried still lived, and I held the key.
Emily's silver bracelet remained in my pocket, cold and solid, a reminder justice was not yet complete, and my daughter and I would never be forgotten. That night, as the police withdrew and the orchard smoldered in smoke, I stood amid the ruins, face burned, heart aflame, and understood that my life had entered a new chapter, a chapter of survival, a chapter of revenge, and a chapter of a mother who had nothing left to lose but exposing every lie. In the stillness, with only the wind whistling through the charred apple branches, I took a deep breath, looking up at the night sky, and whispered to myself, "They will not escape the truth. And I will see justice done, no matter the cost." That night, amidst the half-burned orchard, I was the survivor. But survival was not peace. I was the keeper of fire, the keeper of truth, and the keeper of the promise to Emily. Every secret, every crime, every accomplice would pay. Whoever dared to stand before me would face a storm, hatred, undying maternal love, and 10 years of unhealed pain combined. A year had passed since that chaotic night, since the fire that devoured part of the apple orchard and left Clara lying among the ashes, and I had vanished from the town's eyes, like a living ghost drifting through the trees. I returned to the old house, still the house beside the orchard, but now everything was different. The burn scars on my face still stung red. My thin hands bore the marks of pain, but deep inside, I felt a strange power, the power of a mother who had lost her child yet never surrendered. Every morning, I rose before dawn, stepping into the orchard to tend the surviving trees. I dug the soil, watered the roots, trimmed dead branches, listening to the rustle of leaves underfoot. Each motion carried the rhythm of my heartbeat, the heartbeat of a mother who had survived tragedy. And as I worked, I spoke to Emily, or rather, to what remained of her in my memory and in the silver bracelet I still kept. I told Emily everything about Clara, Ethan, Nolan, and the 10 years of pain. The townspeople didn't understand. They shook their heads, whispering that I had gone mad. I laughed, not from fear, but in acceptance of the solitude and suffering that had reshaped me into someone else. At night, when darkness fell and the moonlight spilled through the old apple branches, I lit lamps in the orchard. The flickering light danced across the leaves, like tiny spirits playing between the trees. The townspeople, watching from afar, said they saw strange lights, thinking I was lost in some dream between reality and illusion. But I knew the truth. I was bridging past and present, keeping Emily's memory alive, moment by moment. Each lamp was a reminder. My daughter had once stood here, had laughed and played, and no matter how much Clara, Ethan, or anyone tried to hide it, the truth still shone, illuminated among the apple rows. In the still of night, I often sat beneath the ancient apple tree, the silver bracelet in hand, listening to the wind whistling through the branches, imagining Emily laughing, running, as if she had never left. I touched the scorched branches that had witnessed my pain, my secret tears, and my bouts of fury, realizing that these scars were the source of my inner strength. I had survived, not just in body, but in spirit, and each day I lived was a way of keeping my promise to my child. Never forget, never forgive, never allow anyone to harm Emily's memory.
The townspeople watched me from afar, not understanding that I was not mad. I chose solitude, the orchard, the flickering lights, and these silent conversations with Emily because it was the only way to connect with my daughter, with the past, and with myself.
I listened to the wind rustle through the rows of trees, imagining tiny hands brushing my hair, innocent laughter ringing through the night, and in that moment, I felt Emily's presence as if she had never left me. Yet, even in these nights, shadows crept back and the pain returned, reminding me that revenge and loss always walked together. Clara was dead, Nolan was dead, Ethan was dead, but the wounds and buried secrets lived on in my mind, reminding me that justice, even if delayed, must be served. And I, Maggie Rowan, the mother who had lost her child, surviving amidst ashes and flickering orchard lights, knew I would continue guarding the memories, continue nurturing maternal love, and continue living on the thin line between madness and reason, between past and present. Every night, the lights remained, as if Emily were playing among the apple trees, reminding me that a mother's love never ends, and that one day, justice would return. But until then, I would stay here, living in seclusion, speaking with my child, keeping the fire of vengeance, love, and truth burning in my heart. Every suspicious glance, every whisper from the town no longer mattered. There was only me, the orchard, the flickering lights, and Emily, eternally present in her mother's heart. A year had passed since I retreated into life among the apple rows, spending each day tending the trees, whispering to Emily in the dark, and lighting the little flickering lamps in the orchard at night. I had thought my life would narrow down to solitude, memory, and the slow ache in my chest. But fate never let me rest. On a night of a savage blizzard, when wind screamed through every apple bough and hail pounded the windows as if it wanted to tear the world apart, a group of young people, lost and bewildered, found their way to my farm. They seemed utterly unaware of the horrors that had unfolded there. They saw only the battered old house, leaning apple trees, and the faint lights bobbing in the storm. They stepped inside, trembling, and went silent when they heard a faint sound. A woman's lullaby rising out of the gale. The singing was soft and sweet, yet it chilled the skin, as if reminding anyone who heard that this place had never known peace.
They edged toward the orchard, where the ancient trees swayed in the rain. And then they saw the silhouette of a young girl standing among the rows, hair drenched, a ghostly figure in the downpour, whispering words that stopped every heart. "Don't wake Mother." In that instant, time seemed to freeze. No one could tell if the girl was real or a spirit returned from long-buried sorrow. The youths fell back in fear, their eyes fixed on the pale figure's every motion. But when they cried out, when their shouts echoed, only the storm answered. Wind keening through the apple branches, rain hammering leaves and earth, and the sense that some invisible force was waking. The police were called, but when they arrived there was nothing left but ash and embers. The flicker of lamps in the orchard had died, and the house stood empty.
Under the blanket of white snow, the orchard bloomed strangely in winter. Red apples like drops of blood, their light refracting through the thin ice, creating a scene both mournful and uncanny. There was no sign of me, no trace of the girl. Only fear and burning curiosity remained in the witnesses' hearts. Where was I? Hidden among the trees, perhaps? Or maybe I had become part of the orchard itself, present in every branch, every wavering light, and in every whisper of the storm. The circle of vengeance I had sown, of loss, of revenge, and of undying mother love, continued on. A reminder that maternal devotion has no end, that buried secrets and suffering find ways to resurface, and that justice, however late, will seek those who sowed disaster. On that stormy night, as the police left and the youths fled in panic, no one could explain what they had seen.
One chapter of the tragedy had closed, but the spectral, vengeful thread remained. It filled every blossoming apple, every keening gust, every faint sound that only the sensitive could catch.
And I, the mother who had lost her child, surviving amid the whirl of retribution and truth, stood quietly watching my daughter Emily, present in each light, each whisper, reminding the world that a mother's love is eternal and that pain never truly fades. In the end, my orchard became a place both beautiful and haunting, a symbol of maternal devotion and of revenge spirals that never end. Anyone who passed through would hear the sound, sense the presence, but none could say where I truly was. I am Maggie Rowan, Emily's mother, survivor, keeper of secrets, and guardian of that vortex of vengeance among the flickering lights and the winter-blooming apples. Whoever dares come close will have to face the truth, the ghosts of the past, and a mother's love that no one can break.